Hello again. So the next little section of this is all about factors acting on organisms, and then we're going to have a little look at energy flow. So as we said in the previous video, all the factors acting on organisms can be split up into two groups, either biotic or abiotic. So any biotic factors which affect organisms are living things which affect organisms and might interact with it. Abiotic factors are non-living things which might affect the organism. So, for example, we talked about biotic factors might be competition or predation, and abiotic factors we talked about might have been things like wind, soil pH, light, temperature. So let's have a look at abiotic and biotic factors in a bit more detail. So firstly, the abiotic factors, what we're saying is that they are non-living factors. So these things include wind. So how much wind is an area might affect the organism, and this can be measured using an anemometer. Now, the next thing is water. So this can be the amount of water available or even the soil water content. Now, this can be very easily measured. Basically, what you have to do is take the soil and heat to constant mass. So what that means is, say for example I dig up some soil and I find that there is 23 grams of soil. I put it in an oven and I heat it up and leave it for about 5 minutes. I take it out and re-weigh it and it goes down to 22 grams. I heat it up, it goes down to 21 grams. I heat it again and it stays at 21 grams. This tells me that there was 23 grams at the start. It's now 21 grams, so altogether there was 2 grams of water in that soil. So heating to constant mass involves weighing, heating and re-weighing until the mass does not change. We could also measure the pH, and to do that we just use a pH probe, which is basically where you take out a little sample of the soil, mix it with water and measure the pH of the solution. Now that's important because some plants like to grow in alkaline soil, some like to grow in acidic soils, and some will only grow in neutral soils. So that is actually quite important, and farmers will have to check what pH their soil is and they'll have to adjust it so that they can get their crops to grow best. Light's also important because, as we know, light is used for photosynthesis. So the amount of light that is available will affect the plants and how many plants can grow in that certain area. Temperature is also important. It can be very easily measured using a thermometer. And as we know, temperature affects the rate of photosynthesis. So if there is very, very low temperatures, but lots and lots of light, the temperature might actually slow the rate of photosynthesis down so much that the plants can barely grow. As well as that, temperature is going to affect animals, because if you think about it, most animals aren't adapted for a really, really cold climate, so they won't live in those areas. And if they found themselves in those areas, they'd probably try and migrate to where it was going to be warmer. If you think of birds in the winter time, a lot of birds in the UK will fly south during winter because it's much warmer in southern areas. Biotic factors then are factors where one species interacts with another. So an example of this is competition, where let's say for example, there are two cheetahs trying to hunt a goat. They will have to compete with each other to get that, and whichever one catches it gets to eat, while the other one doesn't. So that's one example, but there's lots of things here. So if we're looking at this, these are the things which plants might compete for. They might compete for light and water, and both of these are used for photosynthesis and used as a result for growth. They might also compete for minerals, which we'll talk about later on, and we'll talk about things like magnesium and calcium. They might also compete for space to grow, and carbon dioxide, which again is used in photosynthesis, and they might also compete for oxygen, which is used in respiration. Animals then are going to compete for things like food, water, and territory. So territory is pretty much where they live or their habitat or their hunting grounds. They're also going to compete for mates so that they can reproduce. And they're also going to compete for oxygen for respiration.